I had this 15 or 16-year-old boy come up to me the other day and ask me, hey Lenny, what are a few different ways I can train my core? What are a few different exercises I can do? And I thought for a moment, and instead of giving him the answer he wanted, which was to list off a few different exercises, I told him around, well, here are the few basic underlying principles to train your core. And in addition to that, here are a few exercises you can do. But next time you ask them that question, I want you to think around those basic principles and make your own informed decision. So for today, I wanted to, instead of giving you all the answers, let you figure out the answers yourself by giving you the fundamental principles on how the trunk moves. When we know how the trunk moves, we know how to effectively train the abdominal wall. So in that sense, there's three main movements we can do to train the core. There's nothing else outside of these movements you can do to train the core. It is literally only these three movements, and understanding these three movements and how the trunk moves will make you a very much vaster knowledge base for picking exercises to effectively train the core from. So let's get into it. Like I mentioned before, there are three main movements when it comes to training the core. These are trunk lateral flexion, trunk flexion, and trunk rotation. In this exercise, we're going through trunk lateral flexion. That is, we're flexing the trunk laterally to the side. We're moving through something called the frontal plane of motion during this one, but this isn't necessary to know to be able to do this. Essentially, we want to make sure that whatever we're doing, we're trying to get the shoulder down towards the waist to challenge trunk lateral flexion. There are a lot of different muscles involved in this movement, and it is really important in training the core completely. Another good exercise is the side raise. I prefer the first exercise, the side bend, over the side raise. The reason being is you can engage the muscles more appropriately through the side bend, whereas with the side raise, the mechanical lever isn't as long and you get less torque. The second movement is trunk flexion. Okay, during trunk flexion, we're making sure that we are flexing, aka crunching the abs downwards or upwards through the sagittal plane of motion. We want to think about either getting the bottom ab towards the chest or the chest towards the bottom ab. You can see here we've got two exercise alternatives. One is going from up to down, and the other one's going from down to up. Either is fine. However, I find that when people do this hanging leg raise, they just use their hip flexors by not doing the last range of motion, which is arguably the most important. The last movement is trunk rotation or thoracic spine rotation. Through this one, we're moving through the transverse plane of motion. We want to make sure that we don't use the hips as however. So you can see here I have a foam roller to avoid using the hips as much, so that I'm recruiting the proper muscles such as the rotators and obliques. There you have it, guys, the three fundamental ways to train the trunk and the core: trunk lateral flexion, and trunk rotation. If you're not including these three pieces as part of your program, you are missing a vital step in completely training the trunk and the core. I post content like this on rehabilitation, strength, and health across my channels. Go check them out right now and let me know what you think.